𝘁𝗵𝗕𝗠 is a 180 RPM stasis scout that is the newest exotic to make its way into Destiny 2, and today I wanted to give you guys some thoughts and first impressions that I had on the weapon. Earlier today on stream, we ended up acquiring this thing and taking it for a spin, and instead of having you guys watch a multiple hour-long stream, I wanted to throw this video up and get my thoughts out. This video isn't a guide on how to get the weapon, though if you are having trouble with the final boss when trying to obtain 𝘁𝗵𝗕𝗠, me and my team used 𝗨𝗚, 𝗵𝗔𝗠𝗏𝗡𝗠's divinity, and 2 machine guns, and that got us through a 2-phase pretty easily. Also, for those that may be wondering where the catalyst is, at the time of writing this video, nobody knows how to get it, only that it'll probably be available through deep dives via some method. However, even though we don't know how to get it, we do know what the catalyst does, which I'll get into in a bit. So what exactly does 𝘁𝗵𝗕𝗠 do? Well, the exotic trait states that rapidly landing precision hits causes targets to become slowed. In my experience, it takes about 4 headshots for this effect to actually take place on an enemy, which isn't too shabby. This is then backed up by the Tithing Harvest trait, which states precision final blows while creeping attrition is active, aka while the target is slowed, creates a stasis shard that returns to you, and collecting stasis shards refills the magazine, which doesn't have to be generated by the weapon itself, by the way. Any source of stasis shard will work. So currently, the way the weapon works is you fire off headshots, build up slow stacks on an enemy. Once the enemy is killed, they drop a stasis shard, and said shard reloads your weapon. Now, thanks to data miners and leakers within the community, we do know how the catalyst will affect this weapon, and unfortunately, it isn't anything drastic like an Ager's Scepter level catalyst. Basically, the cat allows stasis shards to overflow the magazine instead of just reloading it. Yeah. Had it been a bit more impactful, I probably would have waited to post this video until everyone could get their hands on it, but hey, maybe the leakers are wrong, and hopefully we get something a bit stronger than that, who knows. So what do I exactly think of this exotic? Well, as you could probably tell from the title, I think the scout rifle is going to excel most inside of late game content, especially if you're playing back and you're playing slow, because the gun is a bit clunky. In the gameplay you saw in the background, you could clearly tell that this weapon doesn't just slow enemies, but it builds up slow stacks that eventually allow you to freeze a target, and this happens in about 7 hits, I believe it is. Now, this is a pretty big deal because this means that this weapon instantly has 2 anti-champion capabilities built into it, those being slow to counteract overloads, and shatter after a freeze to counteract unstops. It also is possible to use this weapon to freeze barrier champs before they get their shield off, but it can be a bit wonky sometimes. You know how champions can be. Anyways, yeah, 𝘁𝗵𝗕𝗠 is essentially a primary weapon that has its own version of 𝘁𝗵𝗶, a multi-tool against all champion types, which should be super awesome, right? Well, at the end of the day, it is a scout rifle, and it's a 180 at that. I was really hoping when I first heard of this weapon through the leaks that we'd be getting a rapid fire frame, or at least a 200 RPM, but we got stuck with 180 instead, which kind of blows. I do think this weapon does have potential in the sandbox, especially when dealing with champions, but it sucks that this weapon is stasis, because if you're wanting to lean heavily into using it with subclass synergy, stasis as a subclass just isn't in much of a great spot nowadays, with Strand kind of overshadowing it. That said, I know that you can get some really dope synergy with this thing using the Hoarfrost Titan. That way you can just summon a barricade and get shards for unlimited magazines. You could also use the Stasis Turret Warlock as your turrets slow enemies and freeze them. That will feed you ammo. And the Hunters with Renewal Grasp will also do pretty well. Do keep in mind though, that this scout rifle will probably mostly shine in higher end content, similarly to weapons that have the perk Kinetic Tremors, because with the traits that 𝘁𝗵𝗕𝗠 has, you're gonna just have to lay into an enemy with a lot of rounds before you really see the traits actually take effect and start benefiting you. So do remember that in lower tier content, most adds that you're fighting will probably die before the scout rifle can really do its thing and shine. 𝘁𝗵𝗕𝗠 is a super cool exotic that brings with it to the table its own version of 𝘁𝗵𝗃, but in primary weapon form, which absolutely can put in work against champions. For me though, this probably isn't a weapon I'm ever planning on breaking out ever again, as while I do think it's very unique and I think it's really cool that it can do the things that it can do, I don't think it does quite enough for me to give up my exotic slot. Traditionally, I'm looking for exotic primaries that can burst enemies down, like the Quicksilver Storm with its grenade launcher feature. ad clear like the Sunshot can, which is just a phenomenal weapon, and all in all, not feel clunky while I'm using it. And in the case of Wicked Implement, it doesn't really check those boxes for me and doesn't really give me the exotic weapon power fantasy that I could use to justify using it instead of other more powerful options. I don't really think the weapon is bad per se, but I do think it is the actual definition of mid. Wicked midplement, if you will. But what do you guys think? I am merely but one person, and I know not everybody has the same playstyle or likes to play the game the same way that I do. So let me know your opinions on Wicked Implement down in the comments. It's just a bit too clunky of a weapon for me personally, and while I do like the anti-champion capabilities, I'll probably just stick to Riptide or using my subclass abilities to deal with them for me. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video, and before anything's off, I'd like to give a shout out to the wonderful people that keep my channel going via Patreon and YouTube memberships. For tier 2 and up for Patreon, we have Admis, Serenity, Austin, Cinco, and Galumia. And for my tier 2 YouTube members, we have 𝗵𝗍𝗄, Alex Miser, Hank the Tank, Bluesman, Aldo Martin, Kira, Imposter, 𝗵𝗡𝗄𝗕, Brandon Fisher, Ram, Irvin Hornby, Mad Ghost, Salty, Nimble Fox, Mimimi, Clear, Angel, Ben McClellan, Mayhem Gaming, and Serenity once more. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.